Today we will be learning about natural selection. Our objective is to explain natural selection as a way for organisms to survive and reproduce. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to answer the following questions. What is natural selection? What is an adaptation? And who was Charles Darwin? Make sure you pay close attention because we will be working on an on-hands activity in class. What is natural selection? Natural selection is a mechanism that can lead to adaptive evolution, meaning that some individuals with certain characteristics will allow them to survive and reproduce more effectively than others. Here we have 6 finches with different types of beaks. Each beak is designed to eat a specific type of food. If we go to an island where large, tough seas are abundant, which bird do you think is better suited for survival and reproduction? Yes, the bird in the middle because it has very large and tough beak, so it can easily break seeds apart. What is an adaptation? An adaptation is an inherited aspect of an individual that allows it to outcompete other members of the same population that lack that trait or have a different version of that trait. So here I have an example. We have these 2 birds. Notice their beaks, and based on your observations, which finch is better adapted to eat cacti? Yes, the bird on the right. You can see it eating cactus here. If you notice, its beak is larger and it looks tougher than the other birds. Let me go back so you can make that observation. Natural selection, whose idea was it anyway? So we credit Charles Darwin with the idea of natural selection, but there was actually another scientist named Alfred Wallace who also had the same idea, and they came up with the same conclusion at the same time. But since Charles Darwin was more famous, he had more credibility. He was a British naturalist who voyaged to South America aboard the HMS Beagle in 1831. He finally reached the Galapagos Island in 1835. While he was there, he observed many species, but the finches caught his eye. Darwin observed that the finches in the Galapagos Island were very specialized with regards to beak shape. The shape of each finch's beak was specific to what they ate, and it meant that each finch occupied a different niche in the ecosystem, allowing many finch to coexist without too much competition for resources. The finches varied from island to island depending on the food source available. During his voyage, Charles Darwin noticed patterns and features of organisms. Darwin noticed that the finches across the Galapagos Islands shared some features but were not identical. Another important observation was that the finches were similar to the ones he saw in Ecuador. Here we have a different example of how natural selection works. Natural selection causes populations to become adapted, or increasingly well suited to their environment over time. Natural selection depends on the environment and requires existing heritable genetic variation. So here we have this illustration that shows how natural selection works. So we have a population of mice that has moved into a new area where the rocks are very dark. Due to natural genetic variation, some mice are black while others are tan. Tan mice are more visible to predatory birds than black mice. Thus, tan mice are eaten at higher frequency than black mice. Only the surviving mice reach reproductive age and leave offspring. Because black mice had a higher chance of leaving offspring than tan mice, the next generation contains a higher fraction of black mice than the previous generation. So if you look at the first picture, you can see a lot of tan mice and very little black mice. But since the birds can see the mice, they are eaten faster. So we have more black mice left. So these mice reproduce, which means the next generation will have more black mice. So I'm going to show you a video about natural selection and how genetic variation is important to natural selection.
This is Lithopodius nulla, a simple creature with a tendency, like any other species, to reproduce offspring. Lots of offspring. Although the offspring inherit many characteristics of their parents, no two individuals in the population are exactly the same. This variation is vital to the survival of the species, as only a fraction of the Lithopodius will actually survive long enough to reproduce themselves. As a result, only those with characteristics best suited for survival in the environment will pass on these successful traits to the next generation. Those with characteristics less suited to the environment are less likely to survive and reproduce. This process is called natural selection, and over time and generations, it leads to the build-up of favorable characteristics in the population of a species. The result is a transformation of a population over time to suit its environment. This is known as adaptation. Environmental pressures can also change. But as long as variation in a population exists, new adaptations can occur, ensuring the survival of the species.